This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. As we continue to look at the U.S. and Israeli war in Iran, we're joined now by Mariam Jamshidi. She's an Iranian-American associate professor of law at the University of Colorado Law School and a non-resident fellow at the Quincy Institute. She's written a new piece for The Nation magazine headlined, "Only One Side Has Clearly Broken the Law in the Strait of Hormuz, and it isn't Iran." Professor Jamshidi, explain.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me. So, what I was trying to get at in that piece is that, there's been a lot of international outcry about what Iran has done in the Strait, specifically its efforts to regulate passage of ships through the Strait and to charge certain ships a fee for going through the Strait. The international rhetoric has been that what Iran is doing is completely and clearly illegal. And from my perspective, that's not entirely true. This is not a black and white issue. Iran does have a reasonable legal argument to regulating the Strait of Hormuz, as well as to charging fees. By contrast, the criticism of what the United States and Israel has done to Iran, which is an aggressive and illegal war, has been more muted, in particular from Western states, as well as from some of the regional Arab states. And I think this contrast between these two reactions is very telling. On the one hand, total condemnation of Iran on legal issues that are far from clear, and very more muted criticism, more limited criticism of the United States and Israel when it comes to actions they've taken that are very clearly unlawful under international law. I think this says a lot about the ways in which international law is being deployed in this moment as a way of restraining and regulating Iranian behavior, while effectively allowing the United States and Israel a free hand to do what they want against the Iranian government.
What do you think this unprovoked war that Israel and the U.S., this war of choice, as it's called, have engaged in with Iran, has done to international law and people's perspective view of it around the world, and the consequences when people want to apply international law?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, over the last few years, we've seen the ways in which Israel in particular, with, support from the United States, as well as with support from much of the rest of the Western governments, has eroded and violated and, scoffed at international law and its actions towards the Palestinians, its actions in Lebanon, its actions in Syria, its actions in Yemen, its other actions in Iran, and I think that, these actions that Israel has taken has understandably led many to question the utility and importance of international law, whether or not it still exists or not. And, now with this war against Iran, that those concerns, those fears that international law is really meaningless have only increased. In this moment, though, I think what's also important to understand is that states like Iran are also at the same time saying, no, international law matters very much, and we expect to be treated as equals under international law. Iran in this moment is framing a lot of what it's doing in international law terms because it understands that if international law is truly going to be thrown into the dustbin, then it's going to be far more vulnerable on the international stage. So we basically see a battle. We see a battle between, on the one side, states like Israel and the United States, states that are by and large Western, basically saying international law doesn't apply to us. We can do what we want. And then other states like Iran, states of the global South, saying, no, we want international law. We value international law. International law is necessary to ensuring that we are sovereign and equal to other states on the international scale. And so we are not going to let international law just be taken away from us.
Can you talk more about the UN Security Council? You've noted multiple resolutions have been introduced to condemn Iran's regulatory actions in the Strait. Who is behind these resolutions? Meanwhile, the Iranian parliament's reportedly considering legislation that would formalize its regulatory system, including the fee system, as part of its domestic law.
Right. So there have been multiple resolutions brought before the Security Council since the war started. They have mostly been focused on Iran and Iran's actions in the Strait of Hormuz. The states that have been the real force behind these resolutions appear to be the Arab Gulf states, in particular Bahrain and the UAE, who have also been the subject of the most attacks by Iran. What's, again, very interesting and I think important to understand about these resolutions is that they very clearly and absolutely condemned Iran for its regulatory actions within the Strait of Hormuz. As I mentioned, even though those actions do have a legal basis, those resolutions presented them as being fully unlawful. And one of those resolutions, which thankfully was vetoed by China and Russia, would have effectively authorized all UN member states, that's over 190 states, to go to war with Iran in order to open the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that is a very radical proposition to basically validate and allow states to engage in armed conflict against another state simply for the purpose of opening a waterway. So, and again, there were no resolutions that were brought to the Security Council to explicitly condemn the U.S. and Israel for their actions against Iran. In terms of the domestic legislation inside Iran, that the Iranian parliament appears to be contemplating, as you mentioned, this legislation would basically make the regulatory scheme within Hormuz, in the Strait of Hormuz, a part of Iranian law. It's not entirely clear what the terms of that law are, what the basis for it is, what kind of regulation it'll in fact implement, but it does seem to have a fee system as a part of it. So the Iranians are trying to take this ad hoc fee system that they have developed over the course of the last few weeks and actually institutionalize it within domestic law.
I wanted to end by asking you about Trump's comments. On Saturday, he told a reporter at Fox News, quote, "If Iran doesn't sign this deal, the whole country is getting blown up." That followed 2 weeks before when he warned a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. Professor Jamshidi.
I mean, these comments are absolutely unacceptable. I mean, they are borderline genocidal in their intent and in their implications. To say to the world that you're going to obliterate an entire civilization is, in fact, to make very clear that you desire to destroy an entire people. I don't know if he thinks that this is an effective negotiating tool, but certainly from a legal perspective, from a moral perspective, it's beyond the pale.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.